Hey guys, Jason here of Jason's 310. This is my first video log of a cross-country flight in 10 years. This flight was from Montrose, Colorado on the western slopes all the way down to Houston nonstop, and this is what I refer to as a quote-unquote long-haul cross-country flight. It's 4 hours and 50 minutes, and I believe personally that this shows the benefit of general aviation. I do not believe you could do this in this amount of time on the airlines. You'd have to connect in Denver, and by the time you did that and include the hassle of the TSA, I believe you'd probably be about 5 hours as well. So this is just way more convenient. It also highlights what a Cessna 310 can do performance-wise. I had a few technical difficulties filming this. My old videos were filmed with this camcorder, and I had an audio adapter cable that plugged this into the headsets and into the intercom system, so it would record me talking on the intercom and ATC audio. I tried to use that with an adapter I bought off Amazon to plug into the GoPro, and it didn't work, so there's no ATC communications on this video, so I apologize. Also, the battery, I bought this 5 years ago, and the battery I think is kind of kaput because I haven't really used it that much. And on top of that, I need a suction mount. It was kind of chattering against the windscreen of the airplane, so that's slightly annoying. But most of the footage is actually shot with my iPhone, and surprisingly, it turned out great. And I also forgot some of the lessons I learned doing my first generations of videos, like don't wear a shirt like this. This is the shirt I was wearing, and it reflected off the glass on the instruments. So I promise you my next video will be much higher quality. I'm gonna buy another GoPro and some suction mounts and a new audio cable, and we'll be in business when that happens. So, but in the meantime, sit down, relax, and enjoy this cross country. So here's an overview of the route. I've added the state boundaries. CO is Colorado, NM is New Mexico, and TX is Texas. So we will route across the northeast corner of New Mexico and down through the Texas Panhandle. The first waypoint is called Cogri. Then we'll route to the Monte Vista Airport, or over the top of it, the Cimarron VOR, and I've added the Dublin Airport 9 Foxtrot 0, again, just a waypoint of convenience to fly over to avoid some military operating areas. Here's a zoom in of the Colorado portion of the route. The first topographical features of the south of our path is the San Juan Mountains, which go to 14,000 plus feet. Then we'll pass over the Alamosa Valley, which is approximately 7,500 feet ground level. And then through another pass through the Sangre de Cristo Mountains to the Cimarron VOR. Tying it all together, the portion of the route between Cogri and Monte Vista, you can see that's our first kind of high ground or pass that we'll be crossing through. That goes up to about 12,500, and this portion will be flown at 13,500 on oxygen. And then the second pass through the Sangre de Cristos is again around 12,000-ish feet, and we'll be at 13,500. Then we'll descend down to 11,500 after we pass the Cimarron VOR. Overview of the rest of the route again, taking us down between Amarillo and Lubbock. Again, over the top of the Dublin Airport, a waypoint of convenience just to avoid the MOA complex to the southwest of there, and then on into Houston. Before start checklist, brakes are tested and set. Pre-flight inspections complete. Passenger briefing is complete. The P-tilt covers removed. The tie downs, shocks, and tow bar are all clear. Wing locker doors are closed. Seats are locked in place. Seat belts and harnesses are fastened. Fuel and oil is checked. Fuel, we're completely full. We have 5 hours and 15 minutes plus a 1 hour reserve for a total of 6 hours and 15 minutes to empty tanks. Fuel selectors are on the tip tanks on the mains. Emergency gear handles stowed, all air is off. Trim tabs are set for takeoff ×3. Mixtures idle cutoff. Propellers, high RPM, gear selector is down. Flight controls are free and correct. Circuit breakers are all in. Electrical equipment's off. Avionics master's off. Autopilot's off. Takeoff briefing. In case of an engine failure, if we still have runway in front of us, we're going to chop the throttles and land. And even if the gear is up and we have runway in front of us, because we're going to be taking off on such a long runway, we're going to put the gear back down and land. We have calculated that we can't hold altitude on one engine, so if we are airborne and we lose an engine, we're going to need to find a place to set down. And the engine failure drill, because the gear and flaps will be up, it'll just simply be dead foot, dead engine, verify feather, and deal with the situation then. Try to find somewhere to land. And that's it. We're cleared for start. So we're just taxiing out to runway 17. We're going to hold short of runway 13. There's a guy doing touch and goes. You'll see him here in a second. I think he's in a Citabria. Reason that we're using runway 17 is because it's about 2,500 feet longer than 13, and it just gives us more options if we have an engine failure. So if you look toward the center of the screen, you can see our fellow pilot doing his touch and goes. Now the runway's clear, and we're going to taxi across. We're going to taxi across here and take a dog leg to the left and then all the way down almost 2 miles to the threshold of runway 17. This is GoPro footage. It's not the greatest. The iPhone takes way better image quality. So I haven't filmed the run up. Now ready for takeoff. Gonna line up on runway 17. Announcing Montrose traffic, Twin Cessna 69er 744 departing runway 17. And the sun was really brutal from the east this morning. Lining up. Let's convert fuel to noise. Nice smooth application of power, and then I need to lean the mixtures for altitude. On the fuel flow gauge there are altitude bands, as you'll see there, so I'm just pulling the mixture back to the field elevation, the density altitude. And here we are accelerating. That's 1,000 feet, 1,500, 2,000, and we're pretty heavy, full of fuel. 3,000 feet and rotate. We'll rotate up to about +5 degrees, pitch up on the G5, and then we'll get the gear up. So we've turned out to the east now. You can see the runways just aft of the tip tank. So we're heading about pretty much due east now, climbing out to intercept our course. Black Canyon of the Gunnison National Park is across that ridge. I like to climb out about 120 knots indicated. Slightly slow here. See, we're doing about 600 feet a minute. And there's our course that we're looking to intercept. So I'm just going to stay on this easterly heading for now. Beautiful morning. Visibility is fantastic. Sun's pretty brutal. So now, fast forward a bit, climbing through 10,800, 120 knots. About to intercept our course. Just progressively leaning the mixture. Like to see the EGT around 1250-ish, which is about 175 rich of peak. See the cylinder head temperatures are nice and cool. And we're on oxygen. We're going up to 13.5 VFR. Daniel, my passenger, is setting our flow on the oxygen system. Now we've intercepted our course to Kogri, which I mentioned is just a waypoint of convenience to avoid some of the high terrain. Nice cool CHTs, like to stay under 380. Now 1,000 feet to go, passing through 12,500, just a little bit slow. So I'm going to roll the autopilot pitch wheel forward just to lower the nose a bit and get us back up to 120 knots, just to keep the cylinders cool. Now we're approaching the top of climb, 100 feet to go, going to level off at 13.5. We're doing about 300 feet a minute. And again, we're pretty heavy, we're full of fuel. All 4 tanks are full. And approaching 13.5, I just pushed the Alt capture button on the autopilot, and we should level off at 13,500. Daniel's once again checking that our oxygen is flowing properly. It's the San Juan Mountains to the south. Lake City is down that valley there. And Daniel, because I'm holding the camera, is helping me measure my blood oxygen level with a pulse oximeter. It's kind of hard to read, but it's 96%, 97%, that's really good. Gunnison, Colorado, off to the north, off the left wingtip. And we're doing 172 knots across the ground. Fuel flow is 60 pounds per hour per engine, which is 10 gallons per hour or 20 gallons per hour total, 10 per each engine. EGTs are around 1400. Nice cool cylinders. Again, want to stay under 380. I'd say the average is about 350. Now fast forward, we're through the Alamosa Valley, coming up to our second pass through the Sangre de Cristos. We've been airborne an hour now, so it basically takes roughly an hour to get out of the mountains, because after this pass we'll be out in the plains. Peaks to the north are the Spanish Peaks, and that's the La Veta Pass. That's another pass that we can go through if this pass is weathered in for some reason. we're pretty much out of the mountains at this point. Cimarron VOR is ahead of us. Got about 5 minutes to run. Still at 13.5. We're gonna head downhill here so we can take off the oxygen masks. The reason is oxygen gives me a headache, so we'll go down to 11,500 VFR for eastbound altitude for the rest of the trip. So I've just rolled the trim wheel or the pitch wheel forward, and we'll try to go downhill about 400 or 500 feet per minute. Sitting through 12,900 now. Just going to increase the rate of descent a bit, rolling forward on the wheel. And we're approaching our level off at 11,500 or 11,500. Got a pretty good ground speed, that's just because we're descending. And to level off, I like to roll the wheel back just to reduce the rate of descent a bit before I engage the altitude. So I'll just hit the Alt button, and the autopilot should capture the altitude. Over the plains of New Mexico, we've been airborne 1 hour and 30 minutes now. Mount Capulan, the volcano, is off to the north there. So we've used about 15 gallons now out of each tank. And I'm just pushing down the button here, which shows me the aux tank level, which is 20 gallons, so they're full, 20 gallons in each tank. And it's time to start thinking about burning the fuel out of the aux tank, so I'm going to switch the right engine onto the right aux tank. You can see the gauge is now showing 20 gallons, and I'll do the same for the other tank. And the reason is you've got to make room in the tips. So we're going to we burn fuel out of the tips for about an hour, hour and a half, and then before we switch to the aux tanks. And they take about 40 minutes to drain. Daniel just looking for traffic on ForeFlight. Having a snack. Good to stay fed on a long 5-hour trip. Fast forward a bit, now I've been airborne almost 2 hours. I'm just seeing how much fuel's been pumped back into the tip tanks. And that's now how much fuel is in the aux tanks. Doing 174 knots, got just a slight tailwind. And fast forward a bit now, 40 minutes, and we've, since we switched to the aux tanks, and they're about empty, so I'm gonna switch back to the mains. Fast forward again 3 hours now. We're just north of Abilene, Texas. Not a lot to see out here. Lots of cattle feedlots and farms. Daniel checking for traffic. Fast forward again, we're now north of Fort Hood, Texas. Been almost 4 hours, or we have been 4 hours into the trip now. It's about 50 minutes to go. Got about 24 gallons in each tip tank and just a few gallons left in aux tanks. Just setting the vertical navigation function in the Garmin for our descent. You could do the math mentally, but I just find it convenient to put the elevation, the pattern elevation, and then the waypoint in. It says we're going to begin our descent in 27 minutes. I later adjusted our descent rate to 400 feet per minute. So we're at top of descent now. I'm going to take the autopilot off altitude hold and roll the pitch wheel forward. Start our descent, pull back about an inch or two, manifold pressure. And if I do that, I don't really need to adjust the mixtures at all. I just keep manifold pressure just about an inch below what it was at cruise. And I'm just rolling forward a bit more, increasing the descent. Just going down through 10,300 now. That's Bryan College Station, Texas A&M University. Not long to run now. So we do 8,000 now, still moving along pretty good at 177 knots. Doing about 400 feet per minute. Let's check with the computer. Yeah, it says we require 405 feet per minute. That's what we're doing. Fast forward a bit, we're approaching the class Bravo, and I'm a bit nervous because the shelf is at 3,000 feet. Are we going to make it? Got about 400 feet to go. But the answer is we did make it just fine. I couldn't request clearance even though I was getting flight following because the controller was just super busy. I wanted to ask him for clearance into the Bravo for the descent, but he just couldn't get a word in edgewise. Just getting ready to enter the pattern. We're turning crosswind here for runway 15. Again, this is the GoPro footage. It's just turned out pretty bad. It was actually quite hazy, about 93 degrees when we got to Houston. Crossing over midfield here. Getting ready to turn downwind. Pattern was empty when we arrived. Now turning downwind, a left downwind for runway 15. Out wings level, just to beam our touchdown point now, so we'll get the gear down here in a second. Select gear down, flaps to 15, and then hand back on the gear knob until I get 3 green. Three green, gear down locked. Turning base now for runway 15. And then turning on to final. Make the second turn off here, which is about 2,500 feet down the runway. Welcome to West Houston Airport. Took us 4 hours and 50 minutes, not including taxiing, that's time in the air. We used approximately 105 gallons. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. It really shows the utility of flying long haul in general aviation. I will also do a separate video called the 5 long haul hacks for general aviation, flying long cross country. I'm going to talk about the 5 things we do to really make this kind of flight possible. That video will be out in a week or 2 after this one.